Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to make a few comments in support of the bill. As I just indicated, I will support the bill, and I also understand the need and the purpose of the bill. That's been elaborated by a number of previous speakers, so I don't wish to repeat all those provisions. I would like to make some observations though. And the observations I'd like to make is that really an extension of the insightful comments made by the member for Black. And I think it goes without saying, the relationship between a school, the parent and the child underpins the success or otherwise of the child's well-being, growth and education. So what we need to do is ensure that there's a positive relationship between the school and that, whether it's the principal, teachers, whoever represents the school, the parents or the caregivers of the child and the child themselves. When that relationship is not a positive one, even though, if you like, the conflict may be between the parents and the caregivers in the school, it is the child's well-being which actually suffers the most. And I'm sure as MPs, we've all had parents come to us, and when the relationship between the school and the caregivers and the parents have broken down in some ways, or there's been some barring order given. And so, if you like, my observations or concerns is that what is the capacity, rather than just having barring notices and doing this sort of activity, which is important. In the end, it is important to protect teachers and schools, etc., and no dispute in that. How do you rebuild the relationship, though? It's one thing to set expectations through laws, policies and procedures, etc., which are part of that foundation. How do you actually rebuild the relationship to make sure that it doesn't continue? Because I've actually seen some of these relationships spiral out of control to the extent that even a barring order, I'm not sure is sufficient. And in fact, sometimes I think the police are involved as well. And that helps nobody. So I just want to, just a word of caution is that to make sure that we as a government, as a society, put mechanisms in place and make resources available to make sure that we fully understand what are the drivers to the behaviours which lead to the breakup or the breakdown of the relationship between the school and the parents and caregivers. Because if we don't get that right, as I said, it's often the children who suffer the most. And I've seen children withdrawn from schools where the relationship between the parents and caregivers and teachers have broken down, or the school broken down. I've seen children withdrawn from the school and not being actually in some school setting. That is not a good outcome. Now, it will always be the case that at the margin there'll be parents and caregivers. You can do as much as you try, and it just won't work, and I accept that. What we need to ensure is those, apart from those few on the margin, when parents do, for some reason, act inappropriately, we'd get a better understanding what's driving that behaviour to see if we can actually intervene in different ways to address that behaviour, because we do want them to behave properly and appropriately towards teachers and principals. I think it's appropriate. Nobody should be subjected to abuse. I'm sure the MPs here don't like it when their staff are abused by people coming into their offices, and therefore I don't like that. So clearly I don't like any teacher or principal and anybody in a school setting getting abused either. It's not appropriate. But sometimes when we make the time and resources available to understand what drives that behaviour, we actually do get a better outcome. We do get a better outcome, and ultimately the beneficiary of that better outcome is the child themselves. What we don't want is where we have parents and caregivers behaving inappropriately, the child's withdrawn, and then when they have next generation of people who perhaps then behave in the same way. That is the worst outcome. So while I acknowledge the need for this legislation and I support it, I think sometimes we need to go beyond the law to actually resolve a problem. It does need perhaps some resources and other things to actually address, and that would be my observation and caution while I support these new changes. Thank you.